Hello everyone, SquaredCircle Wrestling is back with another episode which includes worrying update on Bray Wyatt's WWE return, RVD returning to pro wrestling for one more run, Tommy Dreamer leaves pro wrestling, WWE uplifted a major ban, Tony Khan angry with WWE, Goldberg says Vince McMahon agreed to WWE retirement match, and much more. You can check the complete list with time chapters in the description box below. Before we start, make sure to subscribe to our channel for all the latest news. Our first story for today looks at worrying update on Bray Wyatt's WWE return. Bray Wyatt's momentum in WWE has fallen massively ever since he's been absent from WWE TV due to undisclosed injury. According to a new report, it looks like he might not return back anytime soon. According to Zero News, Bray Wyatt is still far off a return and has been pulled from internal run sheets. Possibly won't even be mentioned at the draft at all. Health issues, they are looking into it to avoid complications in the future, but no timetable for his return as it stands. The report will be quite worrying to Wyatt's fans, who are anticipating his return in hopes of getting to see storyline involving him and Uncle Howdy. Next up, Goldberg says Vince McMahon agreed to WWE retirement match. WWE Hall of Famer Goldberg said this week that he had an agreement in place with WWE Chairman Vince McMahon to have a retirement match before his contract with the company expired. Goldberg said in a recent interview, "Vince McMahon and I had a handshake understanding that, after the Roman Reigns match I would have a proper retirement match. And, that hasn't come to fruition through them. So, therefore, nobody puts a stamp on my career. Nobody tells me when I'm done, period. When somebody tells me that, I kinda like to fight against it. I like to do things my own way and I go out my own way. And I certainly don't go out, under Roman Reigns, 3 weeks after I've had COVID and agreed to a match." Next up, RVD returning to pro wrestling for one more run. In a recent tweet, RVD replied to the idea of him returning to pro wrestling before retiring. "The names of the companies isn't enough to go on, but I feel even better than I look. If you don't see me popping up somewhere, someone's got some splaining to do. Of course, my continuance of posting unpopular opinions might be a factor." He was also asked if he is addicted to marijuana. Rob Van Dam responded, "Of course not. It'd be too hard to travel if I had to have it. I just love it. I go days without fairly often and may or may not even miss it. I'm sure a lot of others have themselves convinced they're hooked when they're in fact not. Helpless is always easier than working." He added, "I smoke about an oz a week when I'm home. I've always been able to stop anything, weed, alcohol, pills, caffeine, etc. with zero withdrawal, and if someone can't understand because they themselves are different, they miss the point. Perhaps all sheep are identical." Next up, Jim Cornette criticized Jeff Hardy's AEW return. Speaking on the recent return of Jeff Hardy to AEW, Jim Cornette criticized Tony Khan about the Hardy's return angle, stating, "Jeff Hardy's music plays, and instantly the place blows. They go crazy, they hit their feet, they're standing up, and he hits the ring. And it doesn't look necessarily pretty, and they don't care. He beats up the heels, he hits a swanton, and he hugs Matt Hardy, and the place is going berserk. And I can't believe that not only has Tony FK this up again, but in exactly the same way as he messed it up the first time. He has reunited the Hardys against people that nobody gives two dog shits about. And, to be honest, I don't even think they particularly cared or were caring that he reunited the Hardys. I think they were happy Jeff Hardy was back, and he could have hugged Matt, or he could have hugged Bozo the Clown or Randy Etcher. It wouldn't have made any difference." Tommy Dreamer leaves pro wrestling. Following his win in Hardcore War match at Impact Rebellion, Tommy Dreamer noted that he is going to be taking a break from pro wrestling. "I've known Frankie Kazarian since the original ECW, he was just starting training. He came up with Killer Kowalski, and he got in the ring, and years later we joke about it, where he was like, 'This was the greatest experience and the scariest experience in my life. Tonight was a pure example of what I love about professional wrestling. It's an escape. It's an escape for me. There's no other place I wanted to be than the middle of that ring tonight. I have received so much love from the professional wrestling community. I just gotta say thank you. I'm gonna go away for a while. Mentally, I'm not here and I gotta get better. Somebody else needs my love. Yuta, Bupinder, Killer Kelly, Frankie, I wish the world always sees through my eyes." Next up, WWE uplifted a major ban. WWE had finally uplifted ban on superstars to stream on Twitch. WWE had made new rules regarding its superstars using the Twitch streaming platform. This is a great news for wrestlers and their fans. According to Sean Ross Sapp, WWE and Twitch have established a new agreement that will allow its wrestlers to operate their own channels again. The agreement establishes a three-way split in revenue generated by the channel. The wrestlers and Twitch will take the majority, and the only restriction is that wrestlers from other promotions aren't allowed to be featured on the channel unless WWE clears it first. Next up, Tony Khan furious towards WWE. Speaking on the Keeping It 100 podcast, Wrestling legend Conan explained why Tony Khan is furious towards the WWE. According to Conan, Dragon Lee's triple tag title win over FTR and subsequent departure from AEW for WWE has made Khan bitter. I can confirm to you 100% Tony Khan's anger at WWE is real, and he was really pissed off when Dragon Lee beat FTR. Tony Khan would have never wanted a WWE-bound wrestler beating current AEW superstars for a championship. Next up, MJF reacts to Cody Rhodes' loss to Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 39. In a recent interview with Fightful, the reigning AEW World Champion MJF spoke about his former mentor Cody Rhodes' loss against Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. He said, "I think he came across like a top guy. He was presented like a top guy, had a top guy outing, had a top guy match. He just didn't win, and unfortunately some nights you just don't win. But Cody Rhodes is the epitome of putting the work in. Everything that he has accomplished is literally only because of him, and he's far too humbled to admit that. He got it done himself, and he should be very proud of that. Was I happy to see him lose at Mania? I don't know if I would have been happy if he won or lost. The only thing that I know is he had an incredible outing, and it was probably the best match of the entire night." Next up, Matt Hardy shares concerns that existed backstage in WWE with Jeff Hardy being WWE Champion. Jeff Hardy's run as a single star in WWE throughout the late 2000s was perhaps the peak of his popularity throughout his professional wrestling career. Despite that, each of his 3 world title reigns in the company were remarkably short-lived, leading some to question if his personal demons played a role in his push around that period. In a recent episode of the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy podcast, Matt Hardy spoke about costing his brother the WWE Championship at the 2009 Royal Rumble just 2 months away from WrestleMania, ending his championship reign at just 42 days. Matt said, "People were loving him. Some were pitching to delay the turn to WrestleMania 25. Vince McMahon was open to it. But there were some people who probably were worried about Jeff having too long of a run." Next up, wrestling legend says Jay White doesn't come off as a star. Speaking on Jay White signing with AEW, wrestling legend Conan said this about Jay White. "I've seen him do some good promos. He doesn't come off like a star, and the problem is that Tony Khan has painted himself into a corner. You know, when you watch these shows like Cribs and shit like that, and the guy has got like 50 cars, and you're like, okay, when do you find time to drive them? Do you drive one every day? What's the deal here? He's just another great wrestler in a promotion full of great wrestlers. What's your gimmick? That you're a part of the Bullet Club." And next up, wrestling legend says Nakamura could be the next world champion. In a recent interview with WWE's Senior Vice President of Live Events, the Road Dogg, he opened up on the opportunities Nakamura was given by Vince McMahon. "Look, I think Vince McMahon gave Nakamura opportunity after opportunity. I think Vince sees that you don't have to see Nakamura perform too many times before you see what everybody else sees. I don't think Vince was blind to that or denied him of that, and I think he gave him a bunch of opportunities. Now look, I think the argument can be made that, could he be a top guy? Potentially due to the language barrier. I think now, what are we, 5 years ahead of that? And look, the world's changed. I think he could totally be the champion." Next up, Liv Morgan comments after getting a drink thrown at her. On this week's episode of Monday Night Raw, WWE Women's Tag Team Champions Liv Morgan and Rodriguez confronted the duo of Chelsea Green and Sonya Deville. The reigning women's tag team champion reflected on how her hand was raised with her title while the drink was thrown at her face. "The fact that my hand is still raised. Y'all can't tell me nothing," wrote Morgan. Liv Morgan and Rodriguez are expected to bring stability to the tag team division, as mentioned by Corey Graves in his podcast. Liv and Rodriguez could be a duo who have what it takes to solidify the division and maybe sit on top for a while, and maybe inspire some other superstars who aren't getting the opportunities they so desire right now, who want more TV time, who want promo time, but they're not getting it for whatever reason. Rodriguez and Liv could be very good for the division. And that is all for today's news. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel SquaredCircle Wrestling for all the latest updates.